Welcome to the Food Preparation and Innovation Lab. So we've got a commercial kitchen set up here where first, second and third year students will all spend time doing practical experiments looking at the different aspects of food science. So for example, in first year, students look at the building blocks of foods and they modify the properties of these foods to make them more appealing and nutritious. So one example of looking at the different building blocks of foods is by making pasta. Students look at the different flours that are used in pasta manufacturing using an extruder and look at how the different flours affect the quality and the longevity and the tastiness of the pastas. Another example is in third year, students look at new technologies that are used in the food industry. So they can look at technologies that are used to reduce waste and some other technologies that are used to extend shelf life. One example of that is freeze drying, which is a new technology that freezes foods and then dries them. So an example of that is I have ice cream here, which is hard, even though we're in room temperature, and it's quite crispy. So it maintains its shape, it maintains its color, even though it's still completely dry. And we can do this with all sorts of foods. We've got fruits and vegetables, so we can turn fresh foods into dry foods and still maintain their shape, their color, and their flavor, and most importantly, their nutritional properties.
For the Masters of Dietetics, the students will take a unit that involves taking food practicals. And this is where students will develop a meal plan for a case study, and the case study will have a particular type of medical condition that they'll need to cook the meals for that's suitable to help manage that condition. So, for example, in the food pracs, what they will do is devise their meal plan for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then they will cook those meals and then they get to taste them afterwards as well, so that they will get an idea of what it's like for a patient to be eating those particular foods. So, for example, if we look at a person who's got celiac disease, they will need to look for gluten-free foods. So we have wheat-containing foods like pasta and flour, and they can swap that out for gluten-free flour or gluten-free pastas. Or if they have diabetes, for example, they might look for higher fibre, low GI food products. Things like porridge is really good for diabetes, and they can use legumes, whether they might be baked beans, lentils or chickpeas. The other aspect they can look at for diabetes is the types of fats. So they look at using things like unsaturated fat like olive oil or canola oil instead of butter in their cooking. So in this way, the students can build their food knowledge base, which will help them to provide really practical education for patients when they see them in placement as part of the course.
What you're looking at is the food science laboratory. Here we have year 1 and year 2 students coming in to do food chemistry and food microbiology. To give you an example, our year 1 students estimate the nutrition information panel for food products by the end of their trimester. So they would be estimating the presence of carbohydrate, protein, fats, and energy content in a food. Another example I could give you is where we do a titration reaction to estimate the presence of vitamin C. So in other words, our students bring about a chemical reaction and they're trying to find out the presence of vitamin C in this fruit juice. At the end of the titration reaction, they end up with an endpoint color change, and based on this reaction, they can then go on to estimate the presence of vitamin C using some more calculations. Another example I could give you is what our year 2 students do in their laboratory. So here you have foods that are commonly found in your supermarket. So you have salami and you have slaw, and the students were trying to estimate the number of bacteria that are present in these commercial samples. So you can see bacteria growing on the plate, you can count these, and you can talk of the microbial load in these food samples.
And we're in the CAS Food Research Centre Sensory Lab. And this is where we have students come in and they do a lot of work on food products, making food products better, the relationships between food and health, and things like how we taste food, the sense of smell on food. And we're going to give a demonstration of how flavour works. if we think outside of the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, we think about all of the other characteristics of food. So here we've got various skittles. So it's what's happening up here that's important. But if we block what's happening here, the only thing that's happening is the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or the taste that we're experiencing in the mouth. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to put on the nose clip, and the nose clip effectively blocks the sense of smell by stopping airflow over the olfactory epithelium. Have a go, and you've got an orange coloured one, you've got a red coloured one. What are you experiencing?
Sweet.
Sweet? Sweet?
Yeah, sweet.
Okay. So is it hard to sort of tell exactly what the flavour may be? Okay, do you want to remove the nose clip?
Yeah, now I can taste it. Like
Yeah.
strawberry.
Yeah, so, and that's exactly what happens. That it's all of this characterising influence that comes from the sense of smell. And this is a lot of what we do in one of the undergraduate units, sensory evaluation of food.
So this is the Future Consumer Lab. So this is how we teach our students to use, for example, this virtual reality headset. We are interested in the virtual reality headset because we know that the environment can have an impact on how you appreciate food. So this is an advanced sort of testing methodology that we teach our undergrads in advanced sensory science. So sensory science and consumer science is a pretty important part in our undergrad. So if you do the food science stream, you're going to be exposed to this type of testing. We're not only testing students, of course, we're also testing people from the public. So we have a large database. If you want to be part of the database, you can just go to the CAS website and sign up for the database. So Catherine is eating the chips. We also have an example of somebody eating the food, but then we immerse them in a virtual toilet. And what we've seen is that when you are within this toilet, your taste perception of the food is completely different. And that is quite important for the food industry that is making use of this type of technology. So we just make sure that in our undergrad degree, students will be exposed to the latest technologies that are used in the food industry.